What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Before You Speak podcast. I am your host, Derek Peterson, just drinking from the fire hose of my news feed and processing it with this guy over here.
Yep, I am Elwin, and the fire hose of my news feed just got blown up by American, Israeli, Iranian missile. Pick one.
And that's what we're doing today. Emergency episode again to talk about what's happening currently in Iran and the Middle East. So let's, I'm going to just rattle off a couple of things before we get started, and then we'll get into discussion after that, which is February 28th. So yesterday, the U.S. and Israel launched a joint strike on Iran. Code name, this is great, Operation Epic Fury. I thought that was a joke. Epstein. Is that yours or is that somebody else's?
It's not mine. It's going around, but it's spectacular.
Okay. I had not seen that yet. That is fantastic. And Israel's version of that is Roaring Lion. All right. Targets included military commanders, facilities, obviously the supreme leader, Ayatollah. I'm not even going to pretend I know the second part of that. Who was confirmed killed yesterday, to most of the reports. Iran has retaliated now with missile strikes on Israel, Gulf states hosting U.S. Forces, meaning Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Three U.S. soldiers have already been killed and 5 seriously wounded. Strikes came 2 days after Iran reportedly agreed to degrade their nuclear stockpiles in the Geneva negotiations, but looks like things escalated anyway. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack on this stuff, including the school strike, all of that. But where do you want to start with it?
I mean, another Middle Eastern war, I guess, is kind of the big thing. Like that. That sounds obvious. That's the big thing. No shit. But you know, it is worth noting at the outset that the Ayatollah was a terrible, terrible person. He led a 35 or 37 year long, theocratic, awful regime that, took what has historically been a rich and one of the oldest cultures in the world and just really destroyed it in favor of, Sharia law, I think, but certainly the worst theocratic impulses that you could ever find. His death is a good thing for the world. It's a good thing for Iranians, where it's a better place without him here. But that's, I think, where sort of any universal agreement kind of ends with that.
The positivity ends there. I mean, if he's dead, then, and that was the goal, then we should all just leave, right?
Yeah, I honestly think Trump could have taken a W last night and been like, "Hey, we fucking got the Ayatollah. We're done now. Like, we're not going to go any further. We wanted regime change. We've decapitated the regime. They also killed Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Fuck it. I usually am good with the names.
Ahmadinejad or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Who was kind of the president, also terrible guy. They took out 10 or 12 of the top bad guys. A whole bunch of other bad guys were killed back in June when we obliterated their nuclear facilities for the first time, only to have them apparently spawn again. But no, I really feel like Trump could have taken a W if he was like, hey, we didn't think we'd get him this fast, and we got him, and we got all the top guys, and we're done. We wanted to do this. Iran, you now have a vacuum atop your political leadership. Fill it. Go Iranian people, go do something. I really feel like had he stopped there, people would have been like, hard to shit on him for this. But he didn't. And really, you have this sort of old neocon group of people from the Iraq War in 2003 coming out all saying this is great, the John Boltons of the world, all the people that were in the George W. Bush administration. But you also have a segment of the American population, which, as far as I can tell, comprises everybody under 50, who is like, we don't want any of this shit. We don't want another Middle Eastern war. Why did we need to do this? Why did 3 American soldiers die? Why are we spending this money? And we'll talk about this, but it's uncomfortable for me. Why are we really doing the bidding of Israel? Because that is an unavoidable question here.
Yeah,
So there's a lot.
and to be honest, that was the question I was going to propose to you. And I know that's a hard question, but like, yeah, like what in general this feels like at the moment is just that, the US has no reason to be in any of this. That like the upside for us is doesn't outside of support for Israel doesn't really feel like there is much. Now, Israel has a lot to gain from this. The Ayatollah has sponsored terrorism in all ways, shapes, and forms for decades now. And I understand why Israel would cheer this on and want this to happen. And so, yeah, it begs the question: why do you think the U.S. is so engaged? I mean, this is basically a co-sponsored war, which from what I've heard is, they basically wanted Israel to drop the first bomb and then the US would go in and play cleanup.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. There is.
What? You're Jewish and you don't know
I
the
know.
answer? You're supposed to know all of it, Elwin.
No, man, that's the core of Judaism. That's thousands of years of Judaism right there. We now argue for another 1,000 years about it.
I thought you were all on like the same email thread, and so when something happened, it went to everybody.
Yeah, but there's never a conclusion. That's that's why we're lawyers. I don't know. Am I allowed to say this shit? I don't.
we're,
Like,
we're inching up to that line really closely at the moment. So,
but of course, the Ayatollah has been saber rattling towards Israel for decades.
yeah,
Right. And of course, Israel probably feels safer without him there. And they probably are safer, although the probably is starting to do a little heavier lifting because yeah, how much of a threat was he on Thursday to Israel? I'm not convinced of this, right? Israel took out Hezbollah, which is, one of one of Iran's proxies in Lebanon. They didn't eliminate them completely. There are still some people, but they really defanged them entirely with that whole beeper strike, which is an incredible bit of targeted warfare.
yep.
Then we took out, ostensibly their nuclear capacity in June, although there were questions even then, right after that, about how effective that was. Their proxies are growing weaker. Israel is fairly aggressive in the region. They've bombed like 7 different countries in the last 6 months. How great was the threat on Thursday relative to the threat 10 or 20 years ago, I think is a question that bears asking. And you mentioned this offline before we start. There are reels out there of Netanyahu for the last 20 years saying Iran is 3 weeks away from a nuclear warhead and Iran is 3 weeks away from ballistic missiles that can reach Miami and New York. It's literally been the same story. And they started that story like 3 weeks after the 12-day war last year, too.
Yeah,
So it's incredibly difficult to trust any motivation except for what seems to be the obvious one, that they see Iran as weak, and this is their opportunity to engage in regime change, and they don't want to do it alone. And
yeah.
they want their ally alongside with them. And the question is not why did Israel want this, and why does Israel want the United States with it. The question is why does the United States do it? Why is the United States saying sure? Will put our men, our bases, our assets at risk for another Middle Eastern war? And that I don't have the answer to. I don't see it. Every
Yeah.
senator that was in those briefings last week came out and said there's no imminent threat to the United States. I don't see where there was an imminent threat to the United States. Uh, Nobody does. No, Trump's not even making that
Unless
case.
unless Netanyahu has the Epstein files. Then, then there's an imminent threat to the United States. So,
Yeah, or
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 well,
Israel said they were going to drop a nuke on Iran, and the United States was like, "Well, that would really, we definitely don't want that."
yeah,
Um,
which there was no credit. I saw an interview that somebody was talking about that, but there's no credible. I mean, Israel has never claimed to have nuclear weapons in the first place. So,
yeah, I think
may,
everybody knows they do, though. Like, that's I
uh,
think the worst kept secret in nuclear
in
arsenal talk.
in nuclear arsenal talk. So,
Yeah.
like the admit, do you think that that theory has any legs?
No, I mean, I've heard it said as a theory, but I haven't really heard anything compelling about it. It's so crazy though, like that question of why would the United States join in on this
Yeah.
is there's no information from the government that is credible or detailed at all, right?
Yep.
And I could say there is no information at all. Forget about qualifying the nature of of the information. There is no information. Uh, so then of course we're all left to think like, fuck man, what do they have on Trump? Is this about Epstein? What is this about? Is this
Yep.
about like a business deal behind the scenes? There's no they're not even trying to make the case like they did in 2003 for WMDs.
Yeah. There's
So
a there's
good.
a couple interesting things that have come up that I think I think would be interested to get your perspective on too. So the first thing I thought that I wanted to bring up was did you see the Tucker Carlson interview with Mike Huckabee? Or did you
Yes.
see any of the clips with that
Yeah.
where Mike Huckabee, accidentally kind of said, well, like kind of according to the Bible, essentially, we should have from Israel should be from the Euphrates to the Nile, which then caused all Middle Eastern countries to come out and be like, whoa, whoa, hold your horses there. And so in general, the timing of, I mean, and I'm not saying that that interview had any, you know, uh impact on what was happening here, but there is like, since I heard that, is there a sense that Israel, like, and this is so hard to gain any perspective from an outsiders from the outside of all this too, is like, does Israel actually feel entitled to that land? Like, is there genuinely like a push to be like, yeah, like this, I know that they always publicly say no, we just want what was ours, but, like we saw what happened in Gaza over the last couple years. Like that was pretty while, Hamas started all of that, the retaliation efforts, we've both talked on and offline about this, were pretty extreme and felt genocidal, right? And so part of this, starts to ring true to conspiracy theorists because they're like, does Israel think that they should basically own the Middle East?
Yeah, I don't I've never heard anybody connected with Israel or, analysts or people who are in the know go that far. But I'm sure that they were more than happy to hear the U.S. ambassador be like, whatever your expansionist tendencies are, I'm okay with it because, if we look at
Mm.
the West Bank, which is a whole deep discussion, you know, I- Israel is expanding into the West Bank. They are claiming land, right? They have been aggressive in other sovereign nations in targeted strikes, but they did blow up a building in Doha. They're not too concerned with boundaries right now. So I don't think it goes that far. I think that Christian Zionist theology that Mike Huckabee subscribes to. I mean, look, there's a lot of Jewish people who would look at Huckabee as kind of as a pretty big ally, in part because of that ideology. But at the end of the day, when you follow that ideology to the end, what it's basically saying, as I understand it, and this is like worse than armchair quarterbacking, to be honest. As I understand it, this comes from the biblical idea that when the rapture happens, right, there's going to be 12,000 people from each of the 12 tribes, 144,000 people who are saved from God or saved from end times. And the place that they are going to be called to be saved is Israel.
Mm.
Right. Now, those people are also going to be Christians. They are not going to be the Jews. The Jews are not the ones being saved in this ideology, in this theology, right? I just think it's that this theology would like to get rid of the brown people before they get rid of the Jews. That's, it's just that, I'm not outrunning the bear as a Jewish person. I'm outrunning the people that the bear wants to eat first. Nothing more,
Yeah.
nothing less. So I don't trust that ideology, but I also don't see that running through. I've never heard a thread of that running through Israeli politics either.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I, in general, when I heard that, I was like, man, I've never heard that in like serious discussion. And I have a lot of Jewish friends. Well, I would like to think I have a lot of Jewish friends, but I've never heard anybody say that, like technically we should, own from the Nile to the Euphrates. And furthermore, but and furthermore, I mean, that would cause chaos in the region if there was an attempt to do so. But so Iran retaliated and started bombing some embassies. I mean, to be honest, and it's been hard for me to piece a lot of this together. A lot of their bombs kind of feel like just all over the place, like launch them in different directions.
I mean, I think that if you hit a building, you probably targeted that building. There's a lot of sand out there. So the best I've heard is like the big hotel in Dubai was a Fairmont hotel, so that's a U.S. interest. There was another building I think in Bahrain that was hit, and I think that they believe that there's some sort of intelligence, either Israeli or U.S. intelligence, that was in that building. But they are, no question, well beyond sort of the traditional thought of embassies, you know, armed forces, encampments, establishments, and Trump was caught off guard by that. I think that the reporting on that has been pretty consistent that they didn't expect that. And I'm sure the UAE is like, what the fuck, man? Like,
Yeah, it
yeah, we
feels like
hate it,
some of
we hate
these.
Iran, but we don't want this either.
Yeah, this feels like some of these other Middle Eastern countries are like, whoa, how did we get dragged into this now?
Yeah, yeah. You
Um,
guys take care of your shit. We all hate Iran and we want to do business with Israel and we're all cool with all of that. So, but don't blow
can
our
you,
shit up.
yeah, can you please not blow us up? So maybe the last thing to touch on here, which was interesting because these reports just started coming out. I don't even know if you've seen this. So there was a mass shooting in Austin and a mass shooting in Cincinnati, and maybe others. I've only read about the two thus far, but the latest that I saw was that now the FBI is investigating this to see if it's has ties to terrorism. And prior to this, after the initial bombs in Iran went out, there was a report that, the Iranians, unlocked, their, what do you call it? The cells, you know, the terrorist cells that they have planted around the world, in hatred for the U.S. So I'm curious if you think that has any legs.
Why not? I mean, I didn't hear about the one in Cincinnati. I heard about the one in Austin. It's been fairly well reported and it makes a ton of sense, right? The Ayatollah was like 87, something like that. And he had cancer twice. Like he was on his way out one way or the other.
Yeah.
And by the way, we did him a favor by allowing him to be a martyr. That's not irrelevant, right? Had he died on his own rather than being killed by the great devil, that's a different story. But I think it's pretty easy to believe that there was a whole host of plans in place that his death would trigger. Where
Yeah.
field commanders would not, once they hear he's dead, they know exactly what to do. They don't need orders. And why wouldn't that follow through to terror cells here in the United States? That wouldn't be surprising. It would make a ton of sense where they hear he's dead, they know what to do if he's killed, and they go and do it. Uh, you know, the if we go back, I'm gonna like broaden the scope a little bit for why this is ultimately like skepticism is maybe, too light a word for how we should all view this. If
Oh,
we go
dude,
back,
conspiracies are running in every which direction right now. And because
but just like even,
no one feels like you can trust a word that's coming out of anybody's mouth.
but not even just like conspiracy and underlying rationale, just like take all that shit out of it. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? Right? What can
Yeah.
history tell us? If we go back to 1960, when we had two parties fighting a Cold War, there is not one instance of either of those parties going far halfway across the world and getting embroiled in a war and having it work out well. Vietnam was a fucking disaster, and the social upheaval it caused here led to burning cities and deaths on the streets. Afghanistan for Russia led to the fall of the Soviet Union. The Iraq War for us, 13, 15 years, trillions and trillions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of people dead. This never, ever, ever works. It never works. So why are we doing it again? Right? Whatever the reason is, it's a bad reason because every reason has been litigated. We've tried to spread democracy in Vietnam. We've tried to fight for oil in Iraq. We've tried to take out bad leaders in 2003 and claim weapons of mass destruction. And the communists tried to spread communism to Afghanistan in the 80s. None of this shit ever works. It always has outsized effect at home. And what's the only thing that I can tell that's different this time around is at least there was a pretense of trying to sell this to the American people every other time. This time there's none. None whatsoever. All rules are out the window. I posted something the other day which I thought was a good take. Man, I wish Congress were alive to see this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like this is truly king behavior, and all the sycophants on the right are falling into place. And by the way, I'm gonna shout out the fucking Chuck Schumer wing of the Democratic Party
Oh.
because his statement yesterday was horrifically bad, right? His
That
statement and the
that made my blood boil almost more than what was actually happening. Like
yeah,
I've come to expect this from the current administration, which is terrible. It's terrible that we're going to war with no congressional oversight or anything, and that's what we just expect from our leadership. But dude, Chuck Schumer, go fuck yourself. You're
yeah.
rising quickly to some Clarence Thomas levels for me. No, not that level,
Yeah,
but close.
it's impossible to read his statement and not see that whatever Trump had said, he would have agreed to. Trump could have brought moldy hamburgers and said, "This is Iranian beef that's infiltrating the McDonald's around the country," and Schumer would have been like, "Oh yeah, we got to get that. That's fucking threat to America. Let's
Yeah,
bomb it." It's completely transparent, and there's some reporting. I don't know if it's true or not that the War Powers resolution that's going to be voted on Monday was supposed to be voted on last week, and that Democratic leadership, like Hakeem Jeffries, basically slow walked it for a couple of days because they knew that this was going to happen. Uh, so yeah, Democratic leadership just gross. Like it's not the procedure, the process case is relevant, but it's not the most important thing. You can't
yeah.
be you can be mad that there was no process followed, but you got to be like 10x as mad that now we're embroiled in another Middle Eastern war that's gonna fucking suck.
Yeah. And so I would like to end this in a very irresponsible way and talk about talk about conspiracies of why I think all of this is happening because and I would be remiss to not preface any of this with, I do not know for sure because but just leaning into human tendencies after we see what's going on. Like, we talked about it our podcast on Wednesday. I said, my biggest concern about everything that's going on right now is that I think that there is going to be attacks on U.S. soil in an attempt to foil the primary. And if Israel does have Donald Trump compromised, if they have him under their belt in a way to get him to do things for them that, because of, maybe they have the Epstein files or maybe, it's PAC money, whatever it is, maybe he just loves Israel, and he's kind of falling in line with historical US allies, which that to me doesn't make any sense because he hasn't done anything else normal. So I'm going to lean on the other sides of this in general. But with that being the case, my immediate thought with all of this, as cynical as I've been, is just like, yeah, there's going to be blowback. And in my opinion, I think if there is blowback, part of me wonders if if U.S. leadership in some way, shape, or form is going to turn a blind eye to American citizens potentially dying on U.S. soil in an effort to allow some kind of some ability of the president to actually have a stronghold to stop elections, or to stop the primaries from happening, which granted the U.S. is a big territory, but just none of this smells right. Like, it just, none of it, like, we have no idea why we're there, and we know that his base doesn't agree with this either. And granted, MAGA is going to do what MAGA does, where they come out and, they're against war until Trump says he's for war, and then they're like, wait, we're for war. Okay, so now what are we for? Why are we here? Oh, the Ayatollah, he's a bad guy. He's been a bad guy for 40 years. All right, let's kill him. Like, yay, we won. That kind of
mission
shit.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, mission accomplished. And now we want their oil too, or what else is going on? Like, I mean, apparently with Venezuela, we already have more oil than we can manage, apparently. So, like, it's just something doesn't feel right about this, man. And it feels like the American people, that there could be Americans hurt when all is said and done in all this. And that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I mean, there already have been Americans.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 soldiers that have already died. Yeah, that's shitty on and of itself.
And to the extent that the shootings in Austin and Cincinnati are related to this, if that's true, then it's domestic. I do think, right, like I've sort of said my piece about decentralized elections and all that, but not minimizing the threat. It is a hell of a play 8 months before midterm election to get involved in a war that goes against every campaign statement you made and is opposed by 80% of the country.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Something does not smell right about
serious 4-dimensional chess.
Or there's a play here that, again, like, we're just waiting to see. And if that play is an attack on American soil where a bunch of Americans get very hurt, and there's a full claim that we're at war and primary elections can't happen because we're at war, like that to me, and if it comes to fruition in my head, they allowed it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So
certainly, yeah.
I preface that with the responsibility of saying that is a conspiracy, me reaching, but I don't
know. I don't know if it's a conspiracy. I think that it's a not insane reading of everything that's going on and everything that he has said and his political standing in the country, and the fact that the simple, unavoidable underlying fact about this whole thing, which is that it doesn't make any sense. We don't need to do it. Like, we don't need to be in this war. So give me something. You start to grab for reasons, and he has said he doesn't trust elections. He has said that we're all going to cheat. He has said he would be great if it weren't for elections. It's not a conspiracy. I think it's something that we have to be extremely, extremely vigilant for.
Yeah. And we'll end this here shortly, but there's a lot of bad guys in the world. There's a lot of people doing some really fucked up shit, including Xi Jinping, Putin, all of the people that were raping and molesting children in the Epstein files. So, like, picking the Ayatollah, picking Venezuela, picking like these things that we decide to go after, I'm like, man, like there's just way too many inconsistencies with like what we're picking and who we're deciding to go after and all of this, because none of it makes sense unless you trace the line back to what typically has always made sense, which is, how does this benefit Donald Trump and his family? And ultimately, the only play I can see in that is that this is a power grab, a way for him to try to stay in control, which is what he's trying to do, and that all of this is going to, so if you kind of track this as you would normally track anything with him, that's exactly where this feels like it's going.
Can't say you're wrong.
Well, that's a good ending for this. I like it when I'm not wrong.
I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too. God, I am so, because I mean, the fact that we live in Texas, in the capital of Texas, there's no guarantee that we're safe. So,
we're probably in the safest city in the world.
I would say that I think that I would agree with that, but an attack on a Texas city would also be more symbolic, probably, than anywhere else.
But they'll go like Houston and oil. there's too many shadowy tech billionaires.
Oh yeah, right. If
In
Elon's
Austin.
convenient, yeah. If there's an attack on Austin and Elon just happens to take a flight out that morning,
Yeah, there's too many Elon Musks in Austin.
Yeah. Well, fair point. Well, we'll keep you guys updated for anybody that listens to this as we go. And if we need to jump on and talk a little bit more about something before Wednesday, we will. Or before Friday when the episode's released, but Wednesday's when we record it. So, all right, man. Well, have a good evening.
You too.